Hello everyone, this is Mahmoud Matouk, and in this quick presentation we will have a closer look on N-tier serverless architecture on Amazon Web Services. So my agenda for this presentation is to have a conceptual discussion of the N-tier architecture and the different options to implement this architecture on Amazon Web Services, and then we will have a discussion on how to go serverless, and then we will have a demo of creating an end-to-end serverless web application on Amazon Web Services. So in the simplest terms of N-tier architecture, this is how it looks like. You have your backend or your data tier. This is where you keep your data, whether in a database or an ERP or any other sort of data storage. And on top of your data tier, you have your data access layer or the model layer. And this is where you provide APIs to do the basic add, update, delete operations on your data. And then you can expose this data access layer as services for your clients to use. And then in your presentation layer, you have your different client types, whether it's a web client, a mobile client, any other sort of clients that utilize your services exposed from integration layer to interact with your data. So usually these layers are translated into servers. So in your presentation, you have a web server to keep your static file and present them to the internet. In your integration and DAO layer, you have application server. You could combine them in one server or split them to different tiers, depends on the complexity and the architecture of your application. And in your backend, you have one or more databases or ERP systems or any other sort of data storage. Usually, if you would like to eliminate the single points of failure and make sure that you are highly available, you will start provisioning more and more servers in each of these layers. And soon enough, you'll find yourself adding load balancers and distributing the load between servers, and also providing the logic to identify the failed instances and to replace them, or provide self-healing strategies within your environment, and so on. Soon enough, you'll find yourself ending up with something like this, which is the gold standard for highly available environment, by provisioning the same environment in a passive mode in a different region. So you make sure that you can recover from disasters in a specific region. And definitely you can see how big the environment could be, and no matter how big or small your application, you could spend so much effort and money on provisioning such environment and keeping it and maintaining and operating this number of servers all the time. Definitely by offloading this infrastructure to the cloud, you are taking a lot of the operation complexity from your shoulders. However, you are still in some scale responsible for your servers. So generally, how would we implement these tiers or these architectures or deployments on Amazon Web Services? There are definitely a lot of options, and we can go into so much details, but this is not the scope of this presentation, so I'll just mention what are the options available. So you could utilize virtual private cloud, EC2 instances, and RDS, which is relational databases, or DynamoDB, which is the NoSQL databases, and implement your tiers manually. You could utilize something like OpsWorks, which is Amazon tool or Amazon version of Chef. And in OpsWorks, the environment is architected as layers of stacks. So you could have a layer for your presentation, a layer for integration, a layer for database, and so on. You can utilize CloudFormation, which is Amazon Web Services scripting language to script your environment creation, and you can create versions of your environment. You can utilize this to deploy multiple environments in multiple regions without going through any manual configurations. You could utilize CloudFormation to also run environment test scripts to make sure and verify the environment after installation. And with CloudFormation, you can group everything in one stack, so you can easily delete this stack if you would like to redeploy your environment, and so on. You could also utilize Elastic Beanstalk, and the Beanstalk is a service that takes your application and creates whatever infrastructure needed to make this application up and running. It hides the complexity of the environment from you. However, you are still responsible for the servers created as part of your application deployment. So to go serverless, there are many services offered from Amazon Web Services that you can utilize without running a server instance. It could look something like this. So you could utilize DynamoDB for your database, and actually you could also utilize RDS. Both of them are serverless. You don't maintain any servers behind these databases. DynamoDB is a very fast DB. It's a NoSQL database, so you don't have any complex queries or joins or atomic transactions. But if your application requires any of these functionalities, you could consider using RDS. You could also utilize Lambda for your data access layer, and this is where you go and write a function that you would like to run as a response to a specific event in your environment, and then you can create these events and attach them to your Lambda functions. And these events could be a file upload to a bucket, a record inserted in database, a URL, and so many other triggers you could use as events to a Lambda function. And then you could utilize API Gateway to expose these Lambda functions as REST services or a REST-like services. So you could have a URL to a specific function. When you trigger this URL, it will trigger your Lambda function, which will provide you access to your database. And then you could utilize S3 for your presentation layer. S3 is an object storage service from Amazon Web Services. You can think of it as a Google Drive or a drive on the cloud. And you can configure a bucket, which is the high-level container of your objects, to function as a website host. So let's get into the console and try creating an application utilizing these services and see how it goes.